Okay, so I want to talk about free will. Um, and one thing that came to my mind when I thought about free will was the idea of you have free will, but you also, at least I believe intuitively, I feel like there's this like intuition that free will exists. Like, oh, of course we have free will. So I feel like there's this idea of free will, but on the other hand, this idea of things going how they are supposed to go. And to me, that's a bit difficult because they kind of, to me, seem to contradict each other. So I I wanted to think. I wanted to think. Excuse me. I wanted to think more about this. I wanted to think more deeply about like what is free will and what does it mean. Like what does it actually mean to have free will? So, and I actually wrote some things down. The first thing I wanted to say about free will um, is to me, there seems to be two aspects of free will. One is your mind, and that's more like the part where we consciously make decisions, like, for example, what type of pizza we're gonna eat. Like, that is, to me, quite a well, it seems to me that we have free will in that sense, right? Like, if you think about it, like, oh, I can choose like a certain type of pizza. That feels to me like it's not like predestined, but that's like, what I'm saying. Like, um, it seems, it seems to me to be that way. But we have another aspect of the mind, or sorry, not the mind, but of free will, and that is like the soul, and it's more like the grander things, like like more, yeah, bigger things. And to me, those things seem a bit more set in stone. Not that there's only one like option, but I feel like the soul is more um there's less free will in that when it comes to like conscious like when it comes to conscious free will. It seems to me there's less free will in that sense. Maybe not free will in the sense of the conscious mind part, the more the ego part of yourself that can choose a certain will, and it's more your soul that actually can choose the certain things, and that is more unconscious and feels like there's less free will in that way. And I feel like there are three levels to this, and the first being where you're not very aware of your inner guidance and you don't follow that at all, or at least you don't really follow your inner guidance, which I would say inner guidance and soul are, I would say, the same thing. And you don't really follow that. So let's say that you're in a river and there's a current, and that current is your soul, and that is more your inner guidance, and that has a certain flow. It has a certain like route, that it goes, and you're also the swimmer. So like this, you are also your soul. So you're also the river and the current, but you're also the swimmer in the current, and that is more your conscious thinking mind. Your yeah, the mind part of the free will, and that is the part that is swimming. And I feel like there are three levels to this. You could either stay in the water, and you could, you know, um, just let the current take you and trust yourself. So kind of just, yeah, follow your inner guidance and follow your soul. I feel like that's a certain thing that you could do, or at least a certain. I actually should have started with another part, which I should have started with, but it doesn't really matter. I feel like this is like the second stage, and the first being more that you don't really follow the river. You're not even, maybe even aware that there's like a river, that you're in a river. So you're just swimming whatever way you're going, and you feel like there's maybe some current there, but you don't really, you're not conscious of it, and you just do what you do, and it's very much the mind that is doing the things. And I feel like that part, when you're in that state of like consciousness and that state of living, I feel like that's where depression and other like mental illnesses come from. Is when you're in a state of not following your inner guidance, and you're not following you're not being your true self. You're not following your true excuse me. You're not following your true self, right? I feel like that's where a lot of troubles and struggles come from. And that's when you're kind of just, yeah, you don't really know what you're doing, and you're swimming in the current, but you don't even know that there's a current. And then there's a second stage, what I talked about before, is that you're conscious of it. You know that there's an inner voice, and you're following it. Like maybe there's like a distinction where you're aware of the voice. That's another like level of like, maybe like, how could you say that, a level of understanding. And when there's maybe a distinction between knowing there's a voice and then a step further following it. And I feel like that is like a thing where maybe at that point free will doesn't really exist in that sense, because you're just following your own soul. And yes, your soul is you, but it's different than just, it feels like you're following something. And at that point, I might say that before you had free will and you were doing, maybe you were going against your own guidance, and you're against your deepest desires and your deepest thoughts, and so you had free will in that way, that you were not following it. And then you come to a point where you don't really have free will, but you're following your inner guidance. And then I would say there's a third, or in this case maybe a fourth step, where you actively swim with the current. So your mind and your soul are working together, and they're in alignment, and they are actively creating, not just following the route, but they're actually creating the river current, right? And that might sound a little bit abstract, but I feel like that is maybe like the fourth step in I would just say in this free will perspective. And I feel like at that point you get free will back, if you get what I mean. So not that your free will is totally gone in that sense when you follow your inner guidance, because your inner guidance is still you, but it's maybe not free will in this part. And I feel like free will, when people are talking about free will, I feel like we are talking about the mind, right? We're talking about the thinking mind and the thinking part of it all. And I feel like maybe at that point you don't have free will, but you can follow yourself, and it's like you're just following you. And well, would you say that's not free will? I don't know, but then I would say at the fourth like step, you would maybe actively create the current, so that way you could return to a state of true free will. But I don't expect myself to be at that point. But then again, maybe a good example of this, and also to tie back to the question I had before, the last 2.5 years I have been single. And well, at first I was struggling with that more and more, but well, I would say that the last, I struggle with it less and less. I struggle with less and less, and because I accept a lot of things. But in a way, you could look at those 2.5 years in different ways. I could be like, okay, those 2.5 years were meant to be. So whatever I chose, I had no free will. Didn't really matter what I did. Maybe I did have free will. I could just do what I wanted. But when it came to like the bigger things, maybe you don't have free will, right? So maybe just like you have free will on like a smaller scale, but when it comes to the bigger things, so for example, being single for quite a long time, there is no choice in that. And it's like, yeah, that's something that's just meant to happen. It's like maybe just like on a mind level you have free will, but the current itself and the river is kind of just not set in stone, because I feel like at some point you can change the current. But so yeah, I don't know, maybe there's like it could both be true, in the sense that it's like some deeper, bigger things are kind of just meant to happen, or in a certain way. And one thing I like to think about is that maybe the soul has preferences, or it's drawn to certain people. For example, when on the theme of love and then partners and relationships, when it, maybe let's just look at that example. Maybe it is drawn to certain people, certain other souls in the world. Maybe you are drawn to multiple people, and but you can still, out of free will, you can choose to maybe fuck things up. You can choose to, whether it's unconscious or consciously, you can choose to speed up that process and like be like, hey, well, you know what, I'm just gonna talk to this girl that I'm seeing in front of me. And it's like the soul might bring you into places where you could, like maybe actively and with free will do something. So I feel like maybe it's like an amalgamation of both parties. And like I said, with like the fourth, or like the final, no, I wouldn't say final, but like a certain step, you can work together, right? You can swim with the flow. And I feel like that's quite an interesting thought. And maybe there's two parts. Maybe there's like they could both be true, free will and things, happening for a reason, or like happening how they are meant to be. But I feel like the idea of your soul being drawn to certain things, and then, for example, you can't really choose who you find attractive, or at least you can't really choose whom you really are drawn to. Like sometimes I see a girl and I'm like, wow, I'm really drawn to her, and that's like an unconscious thing that I feel like is deeper than just, oh, I find her attractive. But it's, aside from, kind of having no control over who you fall in love with in that sense, I do also believe that we also do have a choice. At least I do. You can actively choose to date someone and choose to, you can choose them and be like, hey, I want to try this with you. But it's like it's a mix of both, right? It's like on one end you can't really choose who you catch feelings for, right? That's something that's maybe a bit more deeper and more unconscious, and there's less free will in that. There's less choice in that. But there is a choice to choose, like, hey, I'm going to invest my time and give love to this certain person. I feel like it's maybe when it comes to like love, it's like, as an example, it's a mix between a deeper sense of, your soul being drawn to things where you don't really have full control over, and the other aspect where you do have free will, because you can choose to follow that or not follow it, or whatever. So I feel like maybe it's that both could be true. So I hope that I've made a bit of sense here, and I don't know, it was fun to think about it, and I want to do these types of videos more often. So thank you, friend, because we actually had a challenge about this subject, to write something down, and I actually decided to just make a video, and now I did. I feel like it's maybe a little bit too long. 13 minutes is maybe a little bit too long, but fuck it. I hope that some people watch this video and maybe feel inspired. And if you, I don't know, if you feel like commenting, don't be afraid to comment something, and just, I would love to talk about things, or at least just opening up conversations. This is good. I like this to also just vent my thoughts, but also to reach people, hopefully, and inspire each other. I'm gonna do this more often. So, free will, interesting subject, and I haven't said, like, I feel like I've only scratched the surface of it. Sometimes it feels like, ooh, I really, I know all about this, and or certain other things, like, oh, there's nothing to learn. I feel like I know everything, and it's like, you don't. There's always more to learn, and it's crazy to think that there's always more to learn, actually, which is cool. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.